Hello everyone, how you doing? And welcome back to Skye and Evan in the morning. And today we're going to be talking about as we love to do and not talking about things when they're topical, talking about them a year after, we're going to be talking about weapons by
Almost the full year's
Zach Cregger.
August, yeah.
Yeah, by Zach Cregger. It's I don't know how to introduce it. It's a horror film that everyone loved, and we had
Well, it was
differing opinions on, not differing, mixed opinions on. So
it was a hyped movie. It was very like a lot of people were talking about this film before it came out, and there was a lot of anticipation to this movie. More than horror is kind of stepping up as of late. I mean, the movie that everyone is talking about right now is Obsession. I still haven't seen it, but everyone is saying it's legitimately great. And I mean, Sinners as well was a horror movie, arguably. There's a lot of things you could call Sinners, but it's not, I wouldn't call it a strict horror film, but horror is becoming a bigger box office draw. They're becoming more popular. They're becoming more respected as just seen as like really solid movies and not just horror movies that are out for a cheap scare. But this film had a really good marketing campaign and it has a brilliant premise. The premise of the movie is the tagline, which is that last night at 2:17 in the morning, every kid from Mrs. Gandy's class got up, walked out of bed, walked downstairs into the dark, and they never came back. And it's people were comparing that concept to the idea of the Pied Piper, and they were wondering what the story would be, where it would go. But when it came out, a lot of people were saying this felt like a horror comedy or even just a dark comedy. It didn't feel very scary. And I would say the trailers absolutely pitch this as a full out horror film. And
the
when you
trailers
watch it, I'm
definitely
like,
make
I
the
don't
it seem way scarier than it's going to be. The film is very funny, which I don't think it's to its detriment, but
no, not
it just is
necessarily.
very comedic.
I what I would say to that is the the gist of this film, like what mainly drives the plot is this witch. So there's this witch who has a spell where she can get something that belongs to you, wrap it around this like twig that she has and snap it, and then it turns you into just a killing machine. And there is something a little funny about that. And like the big scene of this movie is when Marcus loses his mind at the gas station. But it is just funny to think about that this spell, like wherever you are in the world, seemingly, you just are sent in a beeline towards that person. And it is a bit comedic just as an idea, even though it can be used for the sake of horror. But yeah, I don't know. It's and Zach Cregger, he's kind of like Jordan Peele, where he originally did comedy as well. So there's going to be some sense of, and in fact, Jordan Peele, from what I understand, wanted this script before it was filmed. He was hoping to get this for his production company. So
Yeah, it's a very interesting film. The thing is, right? I think we both felt a little disappointed when we watched it, just from the whole like it was hyped up so much. I had a similar reaction to Long Legs.
long legs. I knew it. Well, it's similar as well, where people were what the fuck when Nicolas Cage started singing when those trailers were like, "This is this generation's The Silence of the Lambs, the most terror." And it's it's a lot of like anticipation and build up. It's nowhere near as overtly frightening as you might imagine.
Yeah, and I was not a big fan of the Long Legs either, but I think Weapons is probably a better movie. The thing is, right? I've talked about this with Evan, and I find it very hard to criticize Zach Cregger's films because the way he makes them, he is definitely making the films he wants to make. I don't think he's compromising his vision, or the vision he has is like not achieved by what he wants to do. I think he's doing exactly what he wants and how he wants it, which I don't know if I can really criticize that in the sense of like, I mean, you're doing the film you want to make the way you want to make it and saying the point you want to say, like, perfectly for what you want. I just don't find it that interesting. I like this film, right? It's I mean, Zach Cregger has talked a lot about it. That it's about alcoholism. Eh,
Yeah, I
sorry.
mean that's well, just to interject, I think it's an interesting question. Is just what's the theme of this film? And I do. He's talked about alcoholism, and of the themes that you could say go underneath this film altogether, I would say that's probably the most prominent. But even that, you know, I don't know if it necessarily connects everything, but
I mean,
go
I
on. Like
really think it does. If you see um what's her name? Um
Gladys.
Gladys, yeah, Aunt Gladys. If you see her as a as a representation of alcoholism and how you know the family lets her in and how it starts destroying and corroding everything. You know, like it makes sense. I get what it's doing and what it's saying, and it's fairly interesting, especially because it relates to Zach Cregger's own like upbringing, which he's talked about a lot as well. So you know, I like all of that. I just don't think that like the film does anything too unique. It's like it does what it's trying to do in terms of what alcoholism means to Zach Cregger and the point he wants to make about it, like destroying lives and people and everything. Um, and I get all that. I just also don't think that it's like all that interesting, because like I know all of this. It's similar to the Substance where everyone loved it, but I was just like, I get the point that it's making after 5 minutes. So do I actually need to watch a full 2 hour film about this? So I don't know. It's like he's achieved this vision perfectly, and I think the same thing about Barbarian. Like the big thing with Barbarian is that, I mean, spoilers I guess, but halfway through there's a POV change that is extremely jarring. But that's the point. It's supposed to be jarring. You're supposed to be like going
Yeah.
from this like
Well,
first hour that's just like full on like amazing horror slow build up, and then just like
I mean,
boom, like this
I,
comedic guy who's actually a
I,
loser. It's very interesting and it's the
I
point. So
well, I want to interject that I think that that 40 minutes of buildup is really well done, and I think that that switch works better than some of the we could talk about the switches in this movie, but I think it works a little better in that context because they build so much anticipation around that basement door and just going through that tunnel that I feel like there's nowhere to go but down after that. So they ease up on the tension and then build it back up, but it's you know they do it again in that movie, and just like they do it multiple times in here when they switch characters. So
yeah. So I don't know. Like it's a hard film for me to judge because I don't think I think it is good in the sense that everything it's aiming to do is done well and to the filmmaker's like fullest potential idea of what he wanted to do. I don't vibe with it all that much. It's a weird film. I don't know. I don't know exactly how you feel, but yeah.
well, on the alcoholism theme, that was one of the things I wanted to talk about is kind of what this film is about. And I would
Hmm.
say that of the overall themes, that's probably the most prominent. There's the whole, Zach Krieger's talked about the notion of like, feeding people who are alcoholics or people who, aren't able to take care of themselves. And that's exactly what Alex does. He buys chicken soup and then he feeds his parents and then later he feeds the kids. So that's something that ties into that idea. And, Alex is a character, he has to step up into a role that's like, he has to stop relying on his parents and do things more on his own. I wish he had more independent agency in this film. I really do. But So that's the side with Alex and Alex's family, but the more direct part of it comes from Justine and Paul, because Justine is a functioning alcoholic and she drinks at night. She drinks with Paul, and she kind of, the notion of relapsing isn't something that I like with the twigs and just Gladys's spell in general, just being able to instantly turn somebody. I like the idea of that being another theme that ties into the alcoholism, and that's what Paul does. He succumbs to the temptation to drink, and he bangs Justine, and it's like I all those things kind of start to ruin his life in his chapter, and his whole chapter is just a spiral of mess and crash out. But I it is one of those things like you said where you can see what they're doing and it works fairly well, but the funny thing is I feel the kids are sidelined in this film. They don't really fit that theme as well. They're just kind of a part that connects everything somewhat. At least everyone's looking for the kids.
Well, they're
And I
the victims of said alcoholism.
like in what way though? Like
Well, it's like the way being raised by
well,
parents who are alcoholics and just being like kind of locked away from a normal childhood, I guess.
I, I suppose so. You know, guess like everyone in classrooms or like other parents you maybe don't see or don't appreciate that's what they're going for.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing they do with like one whole classroom and everything is not just to say like everyone is an alcoholic, but just like for sake of like horror intention. Um, but that it's more of the sense of like anyone can be, and you don't know what's going on at a person's house, which obviously is perfectly exemplified by Alex with like him being the only one who's safe, but actually he's the one who's the least safe, which is interesting. I don't know. I do think, to be fair, that the Alex chapter is probably the worst one because it recaps a lot of what we've already seen in the film that I don't think adds a lot of
Yeah,
value to it.
it honestly reminds me a little of Last of Us Part 2, and I know that's like a punching bag for destroying pacing, but considering that this movie has switches in POV and goes back in time, that's like the last 40 minutes of the film. And of course, it doesn't stay exclusively his chapter for the entire film because, Archer and Justine, they show up at the house, so it's kind of like everything converges, but there is a large section, about like 20 minutes, where you're just going back on the original film and original events, and Alex just can't really do anything until the very ending when he uses the spell against her, which I do love. Gladys showed him how to do that, and it's really clever and inventive, but until then, he's just puppeted around and he can't do anything because he thinks if he tells anyone, then Gladys is going to kill his parents, and it makes sense, but I don't know. It's a little underwhelming for him as a character to just have to be going through the motions and kind of just going to school and acting like nothing's up, and that's it. So,
There is a thing to be said because obviously people talk about in writing that um the audience knowing there's a bomb, but the characters not knowing is how you build tension, right? It's the whole
yeah.
like the scene in Glorious Bastards is always the perfect example of like when he shows that the Jews are under the floorboards and like oh fuck.
There's a
But
reason why that's just the common video essay, like building tension Hitchcock's like bomb under the table, because
yeah,
it is that perfect.
it's yeah, almost a bomb and it is under the table. So yeah. It's so from that you, you think like it makes sense if we were to know more about Alex earlier on about his situation at home, just so we could have that tension building of like, oh, Justine needs to get him out of there and everything. Because like we see his parents being like stuck and not moving and earlier, fairly early on, but we don't really know what that means. Maybe if it had started as an Alex chapter, then cut to the other chapters, and then done finished off with Alex again, maybe probably the tension would have been better built of like how to connect with Alex, because a lot of the film but at the end just feels like, okay, now it's time to talk about the one character we've
Finally,
all
yeah.
been thinking about. And I kind of get it, like the whole build up of like, okay, so this is the chapter where we get all the answers. I don't know. It's like I said, I think Zach Cregger wanted to make it this way, and I think it works what it's trying to do. But I think I probably would have preferred it another way. So I don't know.
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about is how, because I mentioned the premise and the tagline for this film, but it's a lie. It's literally not true. Because that's what I remember, like maybe a week before the film came out, they revealed that one of the kids didn't leave in the night. I'm like, what? They all but one? And it's like, yeah, that's what they say in the opening, like every kid, but then that voiceover says like only one kid stayed and his name was Alex Lilly. I'm like, "Oh, okay. Why did he stay? What's the deal with that?" And the voiceover narration talks about how the police asked him about it, but they just give bare bones materials. And then Justine obviously wants to talk to him, but Marcus shuts her down for understandable reasons. But it's so frustrating because you're like, can someone please talk to this kid? He has to know what this is about. He has to that like my theory when I was before I watched this movie was that maybe he was superstitious because like it was fairly apparent from the trailer that something supernatural or witchcraft oriented was what the movie was about. And there's a shot of a kid stepping over a salt line in the trailer. I was thinking maybe he'd done something because he was like scared of ghosts or vampires or something like that. And ironically, that saved him, which could have been an interesting clue. But there's nothing like that. It's just that he's kind of pushed away from everybody. But then 20 minutes in the movie, he goes to his house and there's paper on the windows. So it's like, well, yeah, it must be all about him, his house. The kids are probably in the house, and they are. It's like, oh, is that it? I remember feeling utterly underwhelmed by that. Like when you see them, I remember my audience was like, oh, like there was a collective gasp when James went down the basement and all the kids are there, and then they all move in unison. Like it's pretty alarming. But I was like, yeah, I where else are they gonna be? The creepy house with the paper on the windows. I think that's probably a good place to look.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say them being at the house was not like shocking at all. That was I don't think it was like meant to be shocking. It was just like saying like, okay, we're gearing up for the end now. Now we know where they are. I don't know. But
Well,
like I guess if your audience reacted that way, that's kind of funny.
I mean, I was just disappointed that the film wasn't really built around the mystery of why the kids left, because that was what the entire film was marketed around. You would think and that's probably why Archer is my favorite character, because Archer is actually one of the parents of the kids, and he's got a direct goal motivated by getting his kid back. And it's the rest of the characters don't have that same kind of, like James and Paul. They're pretty damn indirectly involved in all this. And I remember you saying that the only reason that Paul exists is to get a gun in the house. And I was like, no, you're kind of right. Yeah. Other than that, you damn near could cut him out. I'm like, it sounds harsh, but and from what I understand about Zach Cregger, he said that the reason why there's a cop character in this movie is because he was somewhat inspired by Magnolia, and that movie has a fuck up cop who makes a mistake. It's like the ultimate oopsie for a cop. So I he feels kind of arbitrary and out of place in this film, but I one of my biggest disappointments about this film, like other than tone, which you can probably get into, but I wish more of it was about people looking for the kids. It would have been nice to have like a prisoner style cop character who's like actually a detective who's actually looking into the case. Because how the hell did the cops not find this? I'm like, I guess they're just really bad in Maybrook. It's like, say what you will about the police, but man, the most basic things that Archer were doing. I'm like, did they not look into that at all? Did they not consider that they might have been all going to the same place? I don't know.
It was weird, the whole like police not getting, because I get and I appreciate, I like the whole point of like police not being able to stop something like this, and it being something that kind of needs to be cut at the root and done from within and everything, which, it makes sense, like thematically. But I don't know if that was like the best way to do that when you have like, because it's like obviously they're gonna search the house, and I mean they show her like hiding things from the police and
Yeah,
everything, and it's fairly well done. But you just have to think, like, I don't know, it's like the one obvious place, like the kid who didn't go, and the weird aunt and the fucking family that looks like zombies. I don't know.
it feels like an effort to just satisfy it on a plot level when it rather than a story. It's just I remember laughing when they did that. I'm like, okay, so they're just showing this just to explain why. Because of course you're going to be wondering that why the hell didn't they go through the house? How did they cover up all the? How'd they explain the fork wounds on on his parents? And she makeups that, and then the way the lighting works in the scene where they show up at the school, and she says he had a stroke and can't talk. It's I don't know. It satisfies it from a plot level. It's not like this film doesn't make overt sense, and you could argue that the police just not being able to follow up or getting stuck on certain clues would add up, but like I said, I just find it funny how little of this film is about the missing kids. You would think that's what the entire film was about because it was marketed all around that, but it's more about Alex and Gladys. Like Gladys just, possessing people and obviously invading Alex's home. Because I mean, that's the biggest section of the film. That's the bulk of the movie is showing her infiltrating his life. And before that, you get Marcus's chapter where she's very prominent in that part. So it's
It's interesting because you almost feel like it would have been a really great short film if it was just the Alex chapter, I think.
yeah, it may be better served as that. I mean, hell, even just having the parents. I mean, why exactly did Glad? I don't understand the thing with her spell because she can possess people and essentially hypnotize them, but is the idea that she's getting like life energy from the parents, like stealing
Yeah, that was the
something
point.
from
Yeah.
them to and she did it with the two of them and then she did it with all the kids and
Yeah.
I guess it works. Like she just got sick and then
No, I mean
I
it
guess she's
doesn't
fine
work.
after that.
The whole
Well,
point
I
is
mean,
that it
it's
doesn't work. She
witches.
keeps saying like, "I need to do it." No, I need someone younger or whatever, but it keeps not working. So
Well, and there's what we've been talking about the entire discussion, relapses and addiction. So it's like, she's addicted too in a way. She keeps needing more. She keeps needing to consume. So
yeah.
yeah, it works. It works well enough as a theme to connect everything, but I don't know. I let's talk about the tone of this film. And like I said, people have called this a horror comedy. Like what do you think about this film tonally and its horror or comedy or what it's going for? Does it work? What do you think?
I think. I mean, out. It's certainly comedic. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say it's like outright a comedy. Um, but it is quite a funny film in a lot of ways, in the like dark comedy sense of just like absurdity thing. Um,
Well, I mean the ending with the kids killing Gladys and all getting possessed, like I don't even think it's it's one of those things that just comes down to the execution of it. Just comes down to the how that looks to have a bunch of kids hunting you down and literally trying to kill you. It there's something obviously intrinsically funny about that. So, but it, yeah,
Yeah, and I mean
I
the whole thing with him being hurt, being like hunted by the kids at the end, I also feel like it's just like the film kind of being like, okay, we've had this whole fucking like build up of tension, and now we release. Now is when you get the catharsis and everything, you know. And it is meant to be funny to like take out all the tension inside all everyone watching. And like, I don't know. Like I think the tone works well enough. I think sometimes it goes a bit too far. I think especially with what's the junkie character's name? I forgot his name, but
James.
yeah. So I think sometimes it goes a bit too far, but I do think it is like quite good. Like totally, I think it works quite well. So I don't know. I don't
Well,
mind.
one of my favorite is the nightmare with Archer where he wakes up and just says, "What the fuck?"
Mm-hmm.
Like that. It's the human reactions that I think are some of the funniest in this film, and the gas station's another great example of that, where just characters react in a way you'd imagine them to react in that situation. But I don't think my issue is that. It's just that overall, this film doesn't have a great sense of building tension, really. I mean, I feel the same way about Longlegs. It's funny, we've already compared it to that film, but that film has a lot of just characters walking around or just being in a house and just kind of moving around. And it, especially after when you rewatch it, I don't feel there's that much sense of atmosphere or tension. And it's a hard thing to quantify. Not every film is going to be, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining for building atmosphere and tension, but this film does, especially since a lot of it takes place during the day. It moment to moment, it doesn't really feel all that scary. So
Yeah, I think it's not as like scary. It's more like there's an underlying sense of une uneasy. Wait, I for
unease, I believe. I believe
unease. That's the word. Okay, sorry, my brain is broken today. Apparently, there's a sense of unease is like throughout the whole thing, where it's just like there's something wrong, and we're waiting for the other shoe to drop, and just it builds until the Alex chapter when we find it out, and like finding it out is when you're just like more horrified than anything because like at that point because you're like, oh my god, she's done this to a kid, poor kid who's being like abused by his like aunt or whatever, living in whatever the fuck that environment is. So I don't know. I think it works for what it's going for. Again, it's just another case of like I think the movie achieves what it's aiming for really well. Just not a huge fan.
yeah, pretty much the same. I One of the last things I want to talk about is the rifle in the sky. Especially from a thematic point, because before this film came out, a lot of people were wondering if it might be thematically about school shootings and mass shootings in the States, with a bunch of kids being gone, and the parents obviously blaming the teachers, and the cops not doing anything. It seemed to fit, but I would not say that's all that prominent in this film. I don't think that that is what the film is going for, except for that dream that Archer has where he sees an AR-15 in the sky with 217 on it. And of course, that whole nightmare scene is very, dreamy and experimental. It's one of my favorite sequences in the film, especially from a horror perspective, but that shot, from what I understand, Zach Cregger has said, "Yeah, I don't know why that we just wanted to put that in there. I'm not sure what it means." It's like, what the fuck do you mean you don't know what it means? Like, you made a point of having Archer look up at it. It doesn't even feel like reshot or added in at the last second. It feels like it was important. So why is it in the film? And I don't know what they were going for. And like I said, I don't feel that that's in the film. I don't think that's what the text is going for. Do you think there's some sort of metaphor there, or
I
what's the
mean,
deal with the rifle?
I don't know. I don't know. Because the whole like the name weapons is because she turns people into weapons. It's fairly simple.
Well, well, and again, like before the movie was coming out, everyone was talking about that because it's missing kids. The title is called Weapons. There is something intrinsically eerie about that, but Archer says like Marcus was weaponized, and when he said that, I'm like, oh, that's so that's just the title. It's
Yeah, the
the
name of the movie.
spell is weaponizing someone. It's and the kids are the weapons, so it's
Yeah.
like okay, I,
So, yeah, I don't
fine.
know. I I don't know. I don't know exactly what to
I
feel about that because I always every time I think about that moment I'm just like what's the point? Why are we showing this gun? And I don't like you said I don't think there is much of a point. I think it's just like a visual like maybe meant to like I don't know represent Archer's whole like anger and how he wants to pick up a weapon and do something, but there's nothing like I don't know. It feels like a Rorschach test of like you can imprint onto that and interpret it however you want, but I don't think it is like especially meaningful in terms of like what Zach Cregger intended. So at least what I feel
yeah.
anyway.
Maybe it's a bit of a red herring from his perspective too, because I mean, the another one is 217. Like that number, everyone was wondering,
Oh yeah, that's
was there
a
something meaningful about that? Like exactly, but no, not really. It just
no.
seems like she
Everyone
just
was
stayed
at
up
the
late.
exact same time because it was the time where she broke the twig. So yeah.
Yeah, I that's it. It's I but again, like it's on the rifle is 217, so the best that I can give it is that maybe it's actually a red herring from Archer's perspective, and he's maybe looking in the wrong place. But the thing about his character is he's the only one who does look in the right place because he starts going through and figuring out what the deal is with the kids going in certain directions. So I don't know. That's of the characters, he's probably my favorite, and I it's funny, this film had a different cast originally. Pedro Pascal was supposed to play him, and it's ironic because in the end, he kind of has like a bit of a Joel costume on with the jacket. Um, but I can't picture it. Pedro Pascal is a great actor, but I think Josh Brolin was brilliantly cast in this film, and
Yeah.
he gives an amazing performance. Everyone in this film does, but he was the character I was probably the most invested in, even though some of them are a little bit more entertaining, like the POVs anyway.
Yeah, I probably agree. He's probably the best character just in terms of the one with the most depth, who's explored the most. I like
Well,
Justine, I think, probably best, but
she's really solid too. I mean, I was the, I was hoping she would step up a little bit more, especially towards the third act. She's there with Archer, but she does an awful job connecting to the community, and of course, functioning alcoholic. You don't get the sense that she has that many friends at all. Um, but again, what they're also going for with her character is that she's not a mother, and she clearly like sees the kids as something like a little bit of that. She's kind of parental with them. Um, Small thing with her performance that I love is her crouching down when she talks to Alex. You see that when uh she follows him the second time after that crazy nightmare that she has, and then later on at the school she does that. I'm like, that's a real gesture that teachers will do, and it's just a great thing when talking to a kid because it's easy to forget how imposing adults are when you're a kid because they're like literally twice your size. So something you can do is just crouch down to talk to them. So and really good performance as well from Julia Garner. Like I
yeah.
said, the original cast is interesting to think about. Apparently, Brian Tyree Henry was going to play Marcus, but
Oh,
I
he
think
would have been
the other
great.
cast he would have. I wonder like the gas station scene would have felt completely different. I wonder what that would have been like. But yeah, it's the performances in this film are really solid. So
Mm. Yeah.
Anything more you feel delving into? I feel like we've talked about a lot.
No, I think we've covered it extensively. I think the only thing left at this point is to ask you, Evan, would you recommend this movie?
Yeah, I would just I would just say be careful with the marketing and with the premise and your expectations. Like, don't expect a hard horror film. Like again, it's the long legs phenomenon where the film was sold as a really terrifying, like scary, nightmare-inducing film, and it's not so
It's like
much.
extremely slow
Um,
paced, and the horror
I
is
mean,
much more
hilariously,
underlying than anything.
well, we haven't talked about either, but the monkey that actually got like pretty negative reviews when that came. A lot of people did not like the monkey. I preferred the monkey to Long Legs because it was going for horror comedy more directly than this, more directly than Long Legs. And this film feels like Long Legs in the sense that there's funny elements. It doesn't feel necessarily scary moment to moment, even though it's definitely going for atmosphere. Um, but you know, it's like you said, it does what it says on the tin. It's a pretty standard horror film. It's just that it was sold as something bigger, and I had greater expectations and was a bit underwhelmed by the actual product. So,
Yeah, I think I'm on the same boat. Um,
what
all
would
right.
you rate this film? I know we don't like ratings, but out of 10, if you had to give one, what would you give it?
I think last time I gave it a 7, so yeah.
That's the same
I'd
rating I
probably
gave it
give
both
between a 6 and a
times.
7. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think I could go much higher or much lower.
It reminds me of YMS. It gets closer to a
A
6
6
than
than
an
an
8.
8,
Like
yeah.
yeah, it's not a bad metric for number ratings, but would you recommend Weapons?
I would. Like I said, I think it's actually quite good. I just don't really vibe with it. But most people seem to, so I don't know. Probably worth giving a
Yeah.
shot. Like a lot of people love this film, so all power to them. I think it's better than Barbarian, so that's it's also my take.
I'd have to I'd have to rewatch it in full. I haven't rewatched Barbarian in full to determine.
Yeah.
I from what I remember, Barbarian was better paced, but I, I'd I'd probably see myself agreeing with you if I were to give it a full rewatch. So.
Mm.
Curious how Resident Evil's going to turn out. That's one that's a little bit contentious with the fandom, but the trailers do look promising. It's just again one of those weird soft adaptations where they're going more for
Basically only
mood
using
than
the name than yeah, any actual
yeah.
story, which I like when they do that with video games. Because adapting a video game story into a movie usually ends up being extremely disappointing. Like everyone says, like, oh, we
Just
need a
watch The
live
Last
action
of
Red Dead Redemption 2 movie. And I'm like, no, we don't. The
Us.
best way to experience that story is through the video game. It's a 40-hour long fucking story. You're not gonna get the same experience from a 2-hour movie. I assure you.
Well, Well, and I honestly laugh at the Last of Us because what I've always said for my criticisms with The Last of Us, the show, is they cut out a lot of the action from the games, and it's like, why? Well, like there's a
Because
ton
it's
of
not gameplay.
action. You know, you get dialogue and then action scene, move to another action scene. So, like you're playing a video game, you need that. But my guess is they didn't have the budget to have a bunch of action sequences string things together. You know, it'd be like the raid almost at that point, where it's just constantly moving from fight to fight. But what do you get instead? A lot of dialogue and a lot of moving around. I'm like, well, you know, I just prefer playing the game because the game's more exciting than the show. So,
Hmm.
um, there's a shot. It's so funny. There's a moment from one of the trailers they released where the main character is like right in front of a lock and trying to shoot it off with a pistol, and they miss. And a lot of people have been talking about that. Just that is such a Resident Evil moment where every player's had that. They've been at point blank and miss with a shot when there's like three total bullets. It's like fuck, man. I just want to get to the door. I could see it being that, like being feeling like the gate how it is to play the games rather than necessarily the story of the games, which, maybe it could be a recipe for success, but
Yeah.
It's just so funny that Resident Evil's just never really gotten a solid adaptation, even though there's been a bunch of them. It got rebooted by Johannes Roberts, so we'll see.
Yeah. All right.
All
Well,
right,
it's my turn to recommend something. Okay. So, Evan. So. I'm gonna recommend a movie directed by a YouTuber. We have a lot of those recently.
yes,
It's a
indeed.
movie coming out on digital in 4 days, so we'll have around 3 days to watch it before we record. But it's Iron Lung by
Ooh,
Markiplier. I've been extremely
I
interested in it since it released in theaters. I did not manage to catch it in theaters, even though it did come to Brazil, so that was cool. But yeah, it come out on digital in 4 days, and I'm excited to watch it.
it's funny. I watched Markiplier's playthrough of Iron Lung,
Mm,
so that I kind of knew. It's like, I mean, he's making a movie about it. I may as well experience it through his eyes, rather than playing the game. And honestly, from what I watched, I don't necessarily think I'd vibe with the game. I'd have to play it for myself to know, but um, I'm very curious about that too. I heard it gets a little lore intensive. We'll see. I don't. I don't know.
yeah.
But
I don't
it's
know
video
pretty
game
much
adaptation
anything
and by a
about it
YouTuber.
other
So.
than people say it's like surprisingly good, especially for a movie with like one actor throughout the entire runtime. So I'm intrigued.
And for it to be him, for him to play, just the
Yeah,
main character and be at the forefront of
he
the story
directed
of like,
himself. Yeah.
yeah, it's worth it to check out, even just from the YouTuber making films, because a bunch of them are. It's we
Yeah, they
got
have
Backrooms coming
Backrooms
out soon,
soon.
so
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Yeah.
YouTubers are rising up to make films. Oh, let's tear down the studio system.
Amen to that. All right. So, folks, I think this is it for today. We're gonna catch you all next week with Iron Lung. And if we don't like Markiplier's movie, please don't kill us because it doesn't mean we hate Markiplier. Okay. Okay. Good. We've made a deal now. All right. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for watching. Comment, like, subscribe. I have a video probably coming out soon about the Amazing Digital Circus again. Another one. I might make a third one after the finale comes out. So yeah. Um, and I think that's it. Evan's channel is always in the description as well as my Patreon. And so we'll catch you next week, folks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.